Hello, everyone. How awesome is it to be with you again? It's Dr. Shirley Davis, and I have the pleasure of being with one of my compadres, one of my favorite people, and certainly someone who works with us on our team and has been with me for, I want to say, 10 years. You probably
Oh,
know.
more than that. More than that. Oh, yeah. It's been
Oh
probably
my
about closer to 15.
15 years, my gosh. So I'm back
Our
with
friendship can
Eric.
now drive a car, Dr. Shirley.
That's right. Yeah. So we're back. And for those of you who might remember me back in my days of SHRM, might remember Eric and his days of SHRM, we are back together again.
Sure.
So thrilled and so excited to come to you with some amazing things. And if you all don't remember back in the day when we were at SHRM, we were able to partner and we brought out some amazing resources, tools, research, conferences, and thought leadership summits. And Eric and I just had the time of our lives when we were there. And of course, life happens and you move on and you move up. And certainly we moved out and now we are back together again. So we are thrilled to come to you. And I'm so excited to be able to share with you an amazing resource tool and certainly something that I would say has been my labor of love for the last couple of years. It's been sort of in my loins, it's been in my spirit, it's been in my heart. And so I just had this idea that as I'm getting older and more seasoned and cuter and more attractive, all of those things, as I continue to move forward in my career, I actually wanted to have the opportunity to give back, to leave a legacy, to be able to help my new and emerging and existing colleagues in this work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, belonging, and all of that HR work that we do for the most part related to transforming cultures. And so my goal and role always has been about not only helping individuals get a larger vision for themselves, but also helping organizations become the high performing workplaces where all talent can thrive. And so as the world continues to grow more polarized, more divided, and I think many of you can attest to even the current polarization that we've been experiencing, some of the attacks, some of the setbacks, some of the challenges, and the shifts that we've been experiencing, even in the workplace and in our society, that it has impacted the work that we've been doing. But look, the work is still important. I don't care how much we have to fight to keep it, to sustain it, and to showcase it. It is still important. But one of the things that I continue to get from people who are new and emerging, when I say new and emerging, I mean less than 5 years in this work. Or sometimes I get people asking me about what can I do to now get beyond just training and helping my clients recruit or helping my organization get more talent, fill the pipeline. How can I get beyond just doing a diversity training or doing more unconscious bias training? What else can we do? So I had the opportunity to just take all of my 25, 30 years of expertise and things that I've learned from so many of my engagements, but also so many of my thought leader friends and colleagues, and pull this stuff together because I've been doing this work over 30 years. So I had so many tools, so many frameworks, so many models, so many checklists, assessments. And guess what I decided to do? Share it with the world, right? I know a lot of times when we're in consulting, and that's what I'm doing now, but for 30 years of my life, I was practitioner. I was certainly out there front lines inside of the organization. Now I get to work with organizations sort of from the outside, bringing in that expertise and bringing in a more objective perspective, but also able to share with them so much of my expertise and experiences. So I have what we call launched a brand new tool online called the DEI Academy. Yes, it's trademarked. Yes, it's copywritten. But the DEI Academy is an open access resource, and it aims to help simplify, but also allow us to have access to a plethora of things that will help us in our work. It's a resource library, it's a digital vault, so to speak, and we've split it up into multiple sections. So Eric and Teresa and myself and Gabrielle on my team, we've been working on this for the last couple of years, and Teresa and I even longer, probably 4 years. It's just been in my spirit. and things have come up, didn't always allow us to do it, but now we're there. And look, I want you to know that this is an ever evolving and that this is an ever changing, because the world changed, the world continues to evolve. But we have built it to a place now where this DEI Academy, this library, is now at a place where I believe that there is a sufficient enough information, tools, and resources that you can use that allows us to do this. So Eric, I'm going to just kind of let you, if you will, share a few things about your experience, because you've now been on the front lines as well, helping to bring this to light and taking so much of our thought leadership and a lot of the writings and a lot of our work, and now really framing it in a way in this digital library that would be practical.
Well, I love the fact that you keep using the word library, right? And it kind of reminds me of, your local public library. By the way, shout out to public libraries. We love them. But they're not just a place where you house a bunch of books, right, and check them out and sit quietly and read. They are also really important community centers. And that's what the DEI Academy also aims to do, is to be a place where people can gather, where we can create community, where people can ask questions and get their questions answered by us who are running the DEI Academy, or by your fellow practitioners who are also members. So it really is a living and breathing kind of place. It's like we could have just put this all in a book and said, here, buy a book, and just read it. But it is meant to be something that's a little bit more alive and a little bit more interactive than that. By becoming a member of the DEI Academy, you become a member of an academy with fellow practitioners who you can engage with. And as these challenges continue to mount, and as all of these, developments in our world that are making the work a little bit more complex and a little bit, sometimes harder to navigate, when you need a little support because you've got a small DEI team, or you're a solopreneur, you're out there trying to do the work and you don't have a built-in community to lean on, this can become that for you. And so that is, the other, it's full of knowledge. I'm going to just like a library. It's full of tools and resources and guides and ways to get clear on kind of what's happening in the world. And it's also a place where you can talk about it. It's not just a static place where the knowledge just sits for your consumption, but you can engage with it. And you can, if there's something that you need that you don't find, the beauty of a membership site is that we've got a suggestion box where it just says, hey, I need this. Can you come up with and if it's something that we can deliver to you, we'll get right back to you and say, look for this next week. It'll be live on the DEI Academy and you can find it then in a what's new section that we will be showing you as we start driving through the site.
Good. I know that we are streaming on all sites, and we will take your questions, we'll take your comments, we'll take your hellos and your ahas, and we'll talk a little bit later about what all this means. But this is about connecting, it's about empowering, and it's about transforming, as Eric was hitting as well. But it's also about coming together as a community. So not only will you be able to access tools, and let me tell you something, y'all, I did not hold back. For some of you who know me, I've started out as a generalist, then I became a specialist, then I became an expert thought leader. So I have a plethora of all things DE&I, and I have been, because I've been a practitioner for so many years of my life, I have so many tools and resources. I didn't hold back. There's a lot more that's coming. There's so much that I had that we couldn't get it all for the first phase, but we're going to, on a monthly basis, continue to upgrade new information. And guess what? We're building a community of thought leaders, a community of DEI practitioners, a community of those who are consultants, allies, advocates, those who are sponsors and want to talk about some of the most relevant, timely, hot topics, those who want to learn, those who want to engage with each other, share your ideas, share your best practices. We're going to be doing that. So here's what I want to do. I want to have Eric, and that's why we're here teaming up together. I want to have Eric give you some real life experiences with the site itself. And so there's a couple things I've already told Eric that I'd love to highlight. Like I said, there's so much on here, but I got about 10 things that I want him to show you. And a lot of these come from some of the most common questions that I get when people want me to mentor them, or when I get calls from clients and customers, some of our contracts that we work with now. These are some of the most common things that people come to us with. But a lot of my colleagues, even my consulting friends, will come say, hey, Shirley, we don't do this. Dr. Davis, we don't offer that. We just have this training, but you do assessments, you do audits, you do brain dates, you do strategic planning, you do all these things and we don't do them. So I'm going to share with you some resources, some frameworks that you can do. So Eric, how about we start out with one that I think will be important for all of us as practitioners. This is not for consultants only. This is for those of you inside of organizations. This is for those of you who are just starting and don't know where to start. This is going to help you. So Eric, let's start with on the site. First of all, tell us on the site, if you can, bring up the model, bring up the framework in which we built this. And then I want us to share, like on here now, what you see is you'll see too, where we've got 5 different areas of focus. So Eric, if you can go through those, and then I want to hit the skills and competencies we all need if we're going to practice this work. Because look, here's the reality. Too many of us might be on the phone, might be on the call, might be listening later, but there's too many people that tend to only have 1 or 2 niches, right? And when you have a client and they want to do more, they want to go deeper, they want to go broader and wider, we need the tools and the resources to be able to do that. We can't only just do a training one and done and say we've added value. We can't just only, hire people from underrepresented groups and say we're done. We need to be able to help transform workplace culture. And that's what this will help us do. So Eric, I want to ask you if you'll show us on this site, which again, I'm really excited about the framework itself and how the site is built.
Yeah, so when you log onto the site, you see this kind of homepage, and the very first lesson, if you will, is just welcome to the Academy. So just click on view there. We've got a welcome message from you. We've got a video that helps you navigate the portal, just from a technical standpoint. But then the very next thing you see is this framework that you were talking about, and this is how everything on the site is organized. And basically, the framework is in 5 sections. 2 through 5 are really kind of the process of DEI through organizations. But section number 1 is real important. It speaks to exactly what you were just talking about, which is developing those DEI competencies, right? What are the competencies, the knowledge, the skills, the abilities that a practitioner needs in order to function well and do a good job for their employer, their client, whoever they're doing this work for. So everything that is underneath just becoming a more competent practitioner, building those knowledge, skills, and abilities that you need. Section 2 is establishing structure and culture. So there we've got 3 major sections: organizational readiness, vision.
That's the red, right? Because the way I'm seeing it on my screen, and I know we've got it like a life-size one, but it's not showing all the text. But
exactly.
It can show so the red one, right?
Yeah, we're going around clockwise. So number 2 is establishing your structure and culture, your business case, your vision, your mission, your values, making sure that your organization is ready to do the work. Section 3 is another big one, right? It's everything to do with enhancing the employee experience and performance. So it's recruiting, it's onboarding and orientation, it's training and development, it's building your ERGs, it's engagement and retention, it's communicating, it's building a good employer brand. It's all of those things that you really need to do internally so that if you're doing DEI for an organization, every one of those employees feels like they can belong, is working in a culture where they can thrive and succeed. Section 4 in orange, we keep them going around, that's all the external work that a DEI practitioner has to do. And oftentimes that's the piece that, you and I have talked about this a lot. Sometimes it falls off the radar. We worry so much about the internal life of an organization, what it's like to work there. We don't always think about the consumers or the customers or the various stakeholders of an organization. So if you're in healthcare, we're talking about your patients, right? What's the patient experience at a hospital? We have to think about that in order to do DEI well. And then section 5 in green is just all about operationalizing and normalizing. This is how to make the work sustainable and how to have it live on beyond your individual processes and projects that you're bringing to life in your organization. So no matter what we wanted to put on the site, we looked at this framework and we thought it can belong in one of these 5 sections. So we look at the framework in that welcome section, but then as you say, everything here, or at least the first 5 nodes that we have, all follow that exact same model.
So I would be able to click on the orange button, the red button of established structure. I'd be able to click on drive external So all of these things would then go into its own area of expertise with the tools, the resources there. The other thing I love about this too is the tools are inclusive of, yes, frameworks and models that are in writing, that are in text, but you'll also see some videos there. You'll see some research study that's there. You'll see some checklist that's there as well too. So it's not all about reading articles. It really is a plethora, as I say, multiple modalities in which you can use these tools and get information. So
And
Eric,
in a timely way too. So recently, Dr. Shirley, I don't need to tell you this, but people on the live stream might be interested in knowing. We had a really great conversation with some Hispanic and Latino practitioners about Hispanic Heritage Month, which begins in 5 days.
That's
So
right.
if you go to the What's New section, one of those videos is right there on top. We have a 2024 Hispanic Heritage Month panel discussion. So you click on that. We won't play the entire video because you see it was an hour-long conversation.
It was a really good, rich conversation. I learned
amazing.
that day. I learned some things as a practitioner and just as an individual that I didn't know, and it helped me with blind spots. It helped me with being more inclusive, being more considerate, being more intelligent about differences in the Latino Hispanic community.
Yeah, so we want it to be real timely as well. So I didn't want to go too far without letting you know that in addition to those 4, now you'll notice that this is in green, right? And that means that it also belongs in that green section. So when we walk into develop DEI competencies, we've got a whole section on all these different kinds of areas, and our video is going to be included in here as well.
So are we going to be able to show some highlights of that conversation, or are we going to make them sweat a little bit?
Oh, you know what? You can see it because it's going to be on my LinkedIn page. It's going to be, we're going to share this one kind of far and wide in a lot of different places, but we've got a lot to show you today. So if people want to see a quick snippet of that, we can certainly do that. But we've also got a lot of things that you wanted to get to as well.
Yep, exactly. So we have time at the end and don't have as many questions, then let's show them just an example of some of the things that we'll be bringing to them on an ongoing basis, but some of the things that's already there now. So one of the other things too, Eric, that I consistently get is particularly as it relates to recruiting and sourcing talent. So a lot of times my clients want us to help them with their strategy, their recruitment, and their sourcing channels, how to build their pipelines. But we also find that a lot of times they don't have job descriptions that are inclusive, that are inviting and appealing to a large, broad talent pool. So we help them write more inclusive job descriptions. Can you help me with that? Is that somewhere here?
Sure. Well, that would fall under recruiting. And so recruiting is one of those internal functions, right? So you would find that under Section 3, enhancing employee experience and performance. And so we look here, recruiting and sourcing is one of those big topics. And right up front, we've got a couple of things to think about. One of them is writing more inclusive job descriptions. So we click on that, and then it's just got a lot of great tips for minimizing gender bias, minimizing racial bias, minimizing bias against older workers, LGBT workers, just lots of just lots of general tips to think about when you're putting a job description together.
Love it, love it. Really good. Okay, that's an important one. And then let's also think about some best practices. For example, I've over the last year or so, we've coached and consulted with a number of organizations on how to launch or even how to sustain and manage effectively their employee resource groups. So what are some best practices for how we can create those? Is that in here? Of course it is. So I'll take them to where it is.
Sure. Yeah. So that would be listed under leveraging employee diversity. So we really define what DEI councils and employee resource groups are. We've got a list of best practices when you're putting them together or managing ongoing ERGs. Some top 10 practices of what really good ERGs are doing. And then we've also got, a hot topic around ERGs is whether or not you want to have a faith-based ERG in your organization. And like everything else, we don't come down at the DEI Academy to say there's a strong yes or a strong no, but there are certainly things you want to think about. Before you just, say yes to every idea that comes your way, there are some things that you want to consider before building a faith-based ERG. So which one of these did you want to look at?
Let's click on the top 10 ERG practices and read out like the first 3. We'll give them a sneak preview of them.
Sure. So these are just kind of different ways that your organization, things that your organization should be doing. Keep in mind, they are brand and culture ambassadors for the company. So there is an external facing role for an ERG to have as well. Your ERG members can and perhaps should be participants in the interviewing and selection process when you are looking at bringing brand new employees in, or at the very least, perhaps taking a look at your job interview questions and saying, you know what? You don't want to ask that question. You probably want to phrase it this way. They could be peer coaches for new hires and or newly promoted staff. Lots of ways to build mentorship and sponsorship there. Those are the first three. And then obviously we've got different ideas about other things that ERGs could be doing as well.
Love it. The other thing too, thanks Eric, is that we have a sample of a ERG charter. That's another thing that we get a lot. And so those are things that will be in here that you'll begin to see. And if there are some things that are not in here, I would love for you to be able to ask some of those as well. All right, so Eric, let's think about then, what are some, like in this environment we're in right now, hypersensitive, quite divided, very polarized, political rhetoric all over the place. We need to understand what are some of the myths and then ways that we can bust some of those myths about DE&I, because there's a lot of myths and misinformation. So can you share with us, maybe for those who are really struggling with how to respond to some of these, or even knowing which ones are myths and which ones are truths? What can we do? Where's that at?
Yeah, well, that's real basic knowledge about the industry, right? So we're going to go back to section 1 in developing DEI competencies to find that. And so, right away you see our competency model, and we actually go through each of those competencies. We've got a piece about language and terminology, but then we've got this thing just called our DEI knowledge bank, right? That's just about stuff you need to know. It's kind of a catch-all there. We've got some timelines of some key events throughout history that you probably just want to be aware of if you're going to be a practitioner. And then the very next thing is exactly what you said, those 10 common myths about DEI. We have them written up in a very kind of succinct way here, but then we also, this is a video that we can play for you. So let's just play a real, notice that myth number 1 is when we check the box, we can move on to other priorities. That is a myth. That is not a truth about DEI anymore. It is not a one and done. Myth number 2 isn't focusing on diversity just reverse discrimination? And no, in fact, DEI is about inclusion, and that means including everyone.
Everybody,
folks who look like me and folks who look like everybody else. So let's take a look at some of the things. It's a 12-minute video that you can walk through. Let's just take a quick listen and see what's there for you.
As you work to make your company more diverse, equitable, and inclusive, you're going to hear a lot of statements that just aren't true. Those who make these statements are usually well-meaning, but ill-informed. Sometimes, however, they're deliberately trying to sabotage your work. In either case, you have an opportunity to correct the record. Here are 10 common myths about diversity and inclusion and language that you can use to debunk them. Number 1, when we check this box, we can move on to other priorities. Look, diversity, equity, and inclusion work is a marathon, not a sprint. It's not about checking a box or completing a discrete series of tasks and calling it a day. It's not about hiring just enough folks who are considered minorities or putting the company through a single DEI training course and expecting the culture to change.
So the video goes on just like that. And yes, if you are wondering, that is indeed my beautiful voice.
I love it. My Eric in the voiceover. That's awesome. A familiar voice that people will recognize. Awesome. So it's
what's next?
The practical things, right? I love those. So again, just as you need to listen to it, it's only 12 minutes, and we've tried to make all of this bite-sized. What's really big now is, bite-sized, what I call edible learning, right? You can eat it real quick. It's snackable, right? We call it chat and chew. You can do that and learn this way. Eric, let's do a few more. What about inclusive leadership, right? So that's one of the most common requests that we get now, whether it's an assessment of where our leaders are, or just to talk more about how to help leaders be more inclusive of their teams, and certainly in the organization and in ways that they demonstrate behaviors and competencies. So inclusive leadership, let's say we're doing an assessment. what are some of the kinds of inclusive leadership self-assessment? Yes, we gave you an assessment. There's plenty of them in here, but one of them I thought might be really helpful is doing an inclusive leadership self-assessment and letting leaders, you can do it on your own as a practitioner, or you can, and I should say, not or, and you can then administer this in your organization as pre-work, or you can do it doing a training program, but we've made it available to you. Eric, show us some of those.
Sure. So you literally wrote the book on inclusive leadership. And I mean, literally, there's a book out there called Inclusive Leadership for Dummies by Dr. Shirley Davis. So check that out if you want to know more. But lots of stuff from there is, of course, on the site as well. It's one of our main competencies under skills is inclusive leadership. So if you look at this competency, whether you're a practitioner or what we call a senior practitioner or an executive practitioner, there's different levels of skills that you need in each of these things. But in addition, we've also got an entire section on inclusive leadership. As you can see here, it's one of the main kind of drivers of this developing DEI competencies. So here we've got a whole list on, what is authenticity and transparency? How do you manage conflict, coaching, etc. Lots of stuff there. I think you were talking about this piece on the bottom, this inclusive leadership self-assessment.
Yeah.
Which, it doesn't have much to say here, but take a look at the right-hand side of your screen. There's a download. Yep. There's a 9-page tool that you can look at. Now, to show this to you, I need to stop sharing for a moment and share the actual tool. So let me go ahead and bring that up for you. And I will be...
Yep. And even as Eric brings that up, even though the tool is 9 pages, though, it still only takes about 10 minutes or so, because what we're not wanting leaders to do with this assessment is we don't want them to analyze and get paralyzed and trying to, go through all kinds of scenarios. We really want them to be as open and as honest and as transparent, do a quick assessment. And the other thing we also ask them to do is to think about what your team, what others would say about you. And look, here's the other thing. The other way you can use this is when leaders do it, I also ask leaders to give this to your team and ask them not to write their name on it so that they feel safe enough to be open and honest. Have them do it and then take that assessment, look at it, review it, and see how close it is to what your own assessment is. Can I tell you that when I ask leaders, how many of you are inclusive leaders? All the hands go up. But what we find through focus groups, through surveys and the voice of the employee, that's not the same case. So this is a great tool to use in multiple ways.
So it starts off with just some basic reflections. The actual kind of scored part of the assessment begins on page 3. Yep. We've adapted from some work from Deloitte. We give them full attribution there. 6 signature traits of inclusive leadership. And we ask folks to score themselves from 1 to 5 on commitment, courage, cognizance of bias, curiosity, cultural intelligence, and collaboration. And then they have a possible score of 30 and a low possible score of as low as 6. And based on your score, now again, it's a self-assessment, right? So it's only as good as you are honest as you're filling it out. But it'll give you some really good places to kind of go, oh, you know what? I'm really strong here, but I have some things to work on this area. And that's the most important thing, obviously, for a self-assessment. And then we ask you, so what are your 3 most important actions that you need to prioritize going further? And then it doesn't stop there. We ask you to place a check mark beside any of these competencies you believe are your strengths. But then the very next question is, which of these are you surprised to see here? Did you know that all of this was included in inclusive leadership? So what do you need to then work on? What are some pitfalls that you might want to avoid? And a few spaces to take some notes there. What is your organization's level of readiness for change, right? So an inclusive leader can only do so much in a culture that perhaps is not necessarily welcoming of all that. And then a few things that, you can really write down at a high level. What are your top priorities to try to be an inclusive leader going forward?
Love it. Isn't that awesome? That's an amazing, I love it. And you can see too, there's multiple ways you can use this. This can be your internal self-assessment tool that you use, and you can use it individually as you're coaching a leader. Have them take that before your coaching session as pre-work, or you can do it in a training session. Have everyone take that either as pre-work or as an activity. And it certainly is a wonderful takeaway for action planning. So see all these multiple ways that we can do this. So now, Eric, let's talk about how we can do like an organizational assessment, right? We do a lot of these for small companies, big companies. We do it for organizational nonprofits. We do it for profits, private, all kinds of organizations. So we all need to understand what are some of the ways and what's the strategy and the process in which you can use. So we'll give you a little taste of that, but this is a very, very comprehensive process. But I think though too, that before many of us should be doing any training, we should be doing assessing, right? We should know where the company is, what's the current state, so that you can then build the training around helping to close some of those gaps. Too many times we just offer training and we don't have a real baseline for what we're training for. And you're just throwing spaghetti up there on the wall to see if it sticks. And it's, again, sometimes we have been accused of having training that's not really impactful. That's why we don't start with training. We don't lead with training. I might do a keynote or we might do an opening workshop, but we are driving this organizational audit and assessment for our clients to then say training is a fix, training is a opportunity to close some of those gaps, but it is not the end all be all. It is not the cure all. So let training be a part of it, but the organizational assessment is really where you should start. So Eric, can you take us to that one, particularly the one where it's the measuring the inclusion surveys, like the organizational audit piece. Where is that?
Yeah, so we find that under organizational readiness, which is part of section 2. When you get down here, one of the things that we're looking at is, an HR audit and needs assessment, how to do a document review, right? How to conduct employee focus groups, how to do some stakeholder interviews, all those things that go into a current state assessment. But let's take a moment and peek here at just something that every organization should be doing, which is a standard employee engagement survey, right? A lot of folks might ask, I want to measure how we're doing around DEI, but how do I put that forward? How do I get that information? Well, as you say, Dr. Shirley, you're putting it all out there and you're saying, it says, feel free to edit the following statements, right? Because we don't know, not one survey is going to work for everybody. Right. But here are some statements that people can respond to, usually with your standard Likert scale, strongly agree to strongly disagree around their organization. Just so many different statements that your employees could respond to as it relates to, are you experiencing your organization as a place that is diverse, equitable, and inclusive?
Love it. And here's the other thing that we do with our clients. We share this with them. Now, what we've given you is like a list of the questions, but we've actually put it into a Likert scale. And the Likert scale being, strongly agree, 5, as Eric mentioned, to strongly disagree. We've got it in an actual format with our template, with our logos and all of that branding. You could do the same thing. Yes, I am actually opening it up to the world to say, let's do this right? Because I know too many times most people are holding on to their stuff. And I did it for years too, because we don't want that competition and . But I'm at a place now where we are at a critical point in our work, and we have got to ensure that people have the resources, the tools, and are armed with the success strategies to help you be able to move forward and do a comprehensive. So we are a full service organization, right? We're a full service firm, full service global enterprise and consulting firm that does all of these things, and you can be too, right? So I think that's a very important part and piece of it to do. So a couple of more things. If we haven't hit on some things, maybe you can throw it in the chat. What else would you like to see? Because there is more. I'm only giving you 10 of some of the most important and most requested things, but there's a lot more. Eric, what about measuring success of, let's say, supplier diversity programs, right? And then we'll even talk about measuring some of the DE&I initiatives that are in place too. So let's talk about that. What resources do we have available for people who just need to know? One, and we'll talk about like dashboards and metrics and stuff too, but it's there.
Yeah, so we're talking about supplier diversity. Now we're starting to look outside the organization. That's one of those external facing things. So we're going to go down to section 4, driving external impact and brand performance. Take a look at what's there. Supplier diversity and vendor relations is one of the first things that you see. And so when you're looking there, we've got a brief history of supplier diversity, but what you specifically asked for is, how do we measure the success of a supplier diversity program? So we're going to click on that. And then here we've got just a whole bunch of things that you're going to want to look for in terms of how to measure that work. Again, it's pretty succinct. It's easy to digest. It's bite-sized. But this is everything that you have to think about if you're trying to make sure that your supplier diversity program is working the way you want it to.
I love this, Eric, because one of the things that it does is not only give you a checklist of things you can measure and what are some of the most common metrics in the supplier diversity programs, but also just gives you some food for thought if you're getting started. What are some of those common factors that you need to think about as you're even standing it up and putting it into place? Can you go to now to, there's another one I wanted to hit on, is metrics for success, right? So not just supplier diversity programs, but in general. Now, one of the things, Eric, too, if you go back, one of the things you said, this one is externally facing, right? When I talked about supplier diversity, and that is because you're right. It's about bringing in external vendors and suppliers. It's about being externally facing and trying to bring in new business. And yes, being with the marketplace and partners and building alliances outside of your organization that then come in. Where Eric is getting ready to go now is talking about the metrics on the inside of the organization that you need to track, measure, and report. So let's talk about some of those.
Yeah, but that's really that part of, making sure that your work is sustainable, right? Measuring the efforts so that you can see that this is going to have a life beyond. And that's going to be in section 5, which is all around operationalizing and normalizing DEI. So measurement is one of the first things, and we've got a piece here that's called measuring what matters, and making sure that you're not measuring things that don't necessarily have an impact to operationalizing and sustaining your work. So understanding what makes a metric good, right? And considering some common areas that you want to measure. A lot of people measure recruitment. Quite frankly, they stop there. And that should not be the only thing that we're looking at, but also retention, compensation, employee engagement, and finally, avoiding some mistakes that people make when they measure the wrong way, and it ends up derailing some of the great work that they've done thus far.
I love it. Right. Again, more stuff that we can use. And then there is a sampler dashboard that's also in here as well. And so you'll be able to see that when you go in. All right. So let's do one more, and then we'll take questions. What about the fact that we are now having conversations about topics that we had not really had conversations about before? My good friend Mary Frances talks about the fact that we can't talk about that at work, but look, we're talking about it now. And so really key and critical to have some skills and some real tactics and strategies for how to do that. So we have something for you, and I've called it Tactics for Talking About Taboo Topics. For those of you who don't know me, I love alliterations, right? I love to come up with those catchy phrases that people can remember. So yes, we've been doing quite a bit of training and education on this, but we also created a wonderful tool for the before the conversation, the during the conversation, and after the conversation. So let's talk a little bit about that, Eric, and show them where that can be. Oh, and I see psychological safety at work too is a part of that.
Yeah, we find this in section 3 under our section on engagement and retention, because it is, taboo topics. I mean, it could have gone under communications, I guess. Here's something to note. If you're looking under communications and you can't find it, right? It's like, oh, I really want something for talking about, those tough topics. You can always search for something. And so let's just do a search here. It's like, gosh, I didn't find it under communication, and I was kind of hoping it would be there. Let me just look for that. Oh, here it is. Tactics for talking about taboo topics. And it takes you right there. So you'll find it. This is another video. This one's an hour long, right? So lots of information we can find there. And I believe this is you conducting a keynote about this topic. But we've also got, basically all the big points that you're making throughout there. We've also got those written out. So if that's something that you'd like to read, you can do that. So like you say, before the conversation, here's all a bunch of things you need to think of. During the conversation, here's some things you want to keep in mind. And then finally, after the conversation, here's some follow-up activities that you might want to do. So, all of this data, and in addition, a 53-minute video to watch to really experience the message being driven home by you.
Yep. And then we do that same thing too, like psychological safety is another one where we pin these two together, because you really need to have psychological safety in the workplace to be able to even have difficult, uncomfortable, crucial, or critical conversations, whatever people call them. We talk about those, so they're really grouped together. They're cousins, because you really can't have one without the other. And so we usually talk about both. But let's hit on just real quickly about some of what's in the psychological safety piece.
Yeah, well, we use the Amy Edmondson, Timothy Clark model of there are levels of psychological safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Clark defined them as inclusion safety, learner safety, contributor safety, and challenger safety. So, am I safe to be myself? Can I actually bring my whole self to work and be me at the office? Am I safe to ask questions? If I don't know something, is that going to be a career limiting moment? Or can I say, I'm not sure how to do this. Can somebody help me? Am I safe to have ideas, right? Maybe I have an idea that looks like it's going to go against the grain of what a lot of other folks are doing, but can I bring that up? Am I safe to do that? Or is that going to be a career limiting move on my standpoint? And then finally, the toughest one for a lot of people is, can I challenge the status quo? Can I say, I don't like what's going on here? I have real issues with this. Is there a way that you can bring this up and say, we really ought to consider another way forward? So all of these things, and then finally, how do you know if your team possesses psychological safety, and why is it important for you to focus on that? If you don't have psychological safety on your team, what do you do about that? You can't snap your fingers and make everyone feel safe. There's a whole process that you need to go through. So again, look at all of this information that we've got here on this, really, really crucial topic. And if you want more, just ask us, right? Go back to the dashboard, slick down here to the bottom, and we're always looking for some things that you say, I need more on psychological safety. Specifically, I need someone to answer this question for me. You can do it here, or you can go to our DE Academy community, jump in right here, and here's a whole bunch of places for you to ask the questions that you've got. The main place, I think, is just your DEI exchange. I've gotten us started here with one message saying, hey, I'm Eric, introduce yourself, and if there's any questions you have, put them open for discussion. As soon as you see this, if somebody asks a question and you've either got an answer or you've got another spin on it, write a comment, leave it there. It works just like social media. We do have some ground rules to make sure that people are engaging in a way that's going to be helpful for everyone and respectful. I mostly trust DEI practitioners as a group to be fairly respectful of each other, but also there's some ground rules around confidentiality and making sure that we're engaging in a way that really helps everybody. But again, a place for you either from us as the folks who are authoring the site and kind of running it and managing it, or quick questions that you can get from other folks. We've got a whole lot of places for you to find those as well.
And so that was the community piece, and we're going to be doing more and more of the community pieces as well. Are you able to go to just like the landing page, Eric? Can you go there so that it will allow people to kind of see a little bit more? There's and people can now go to DEIacademy.com and you'll be able to, now Eric and I think Eric is on the working page, right? But there's one that you'll all be able to see when you open it up, and it'll take you to the actual landing page. So we're excited. So once a month, you're going to see us doing some panel discussions or just having a live conversation like this, but it won't be just Eric and I presenting. It may be one of us or some others that I have brought on, other experts, other thought leaders that will be able to share some hot topics, some things that are going on, what are some wisdom, some, takeaways that we can immediately apply. So that's going to be happening every month. Because of your engagement, you'll be able to come in, participate in panels. You might send us a request and say, hey, I'd love to do a panel topic on this, this, and this. Or I have a group of 3 or 4 of us. We'd like to, be a part of this. And when you do it through our academy, you'll be featured in here and it'll become a part of the library. So we're asking as many of you who are thought leaders, who are practitioners, who have some successes under your belt and some great tools, donate to the museum. We don't have a problem with having it on here. Now, obviously, we'll have to talk a little bit more about what that is and make sure we vet it. But we want you to be a part of it. And yes, it is a membership subscription. But I think if you see what Eric and I just showed you today, the 10 things out of the hundreds of things that are on here, the membership subscription is so minimal. You pay for it with just a couple of tools that you access. So you'll see on here where you can join it today. You'll see there it is, Eric. Slow down right here. Go back up to the cat right here, right here. So there's the one we could see that better. Because when you were doing it from your other page, it was a little bit hidden. But people can see the actual framework that we use to develop this entire DEI Academy, this site. and then you'll see what's under each of these. You can click on them and it'll take you through. So we color coded it to make it easy for you, so you can read these and see where it is. You can use the search engine in each of those categories to find what you may be looking for. Is it right for you? Then you'll see there's a question there. And look how little this is. This is a little bit for a whole lot. This is a great, great value for a small investment. So today we are accessing it. This thing is going live, and we wanted you to be the first to see it, to hear it, and to know it's available. The other thing too that we are doing is making this available to corporations. So you can literally purchase seats for a number of people inside of your organization, and they can have access. So if you got an HR team, if you got a DEI team, if you have a employee resource group and sponsors and all of the advocates and allies, anyone that wants to know more, if there's an organization that has recently disbanded, or they never had a DE&I office, or anyone that's they've never had anyone that's focusing on this work, and there's some things in here that you can leverage, this is the place to come to be a part of it. So it's individual memberships, and it's also organizational or corporate memberships as well. So we hope that you will share this information with your colleagues, your friends. We hope you'll be one of the first to take advantage of it. And again, if you have some questions, some comments, some additional needs, wondering if this is there, if that's there, Eric and I are here. We're going to be doing a couple of these over the next few months to just continue to introduce people to this amazing tool. But I'd love to get some of your feedback, and just know that you're feeling this thing and you're like, wow. I got a couple of text messages while Eric was talking, like, this is great. Wow. Oh my God. Like, people are really excited about having something else as a resource. Grace says, thank you, Eric. These are very insightful. Yeah, really great. I'm seeing some of that. Wow, amazing. Thank you all for being a part of this. Really exciting. Go tell your friends, go tell your HR teams, tell your DEI colleagues and other practitioners that you know that there's a tool, there's a resource. And let me tell you something, I would challenge you to tell me where else you can find this much of a resource, of a library, of a digital vault, where people are giving away all of their expertise, all of their tools and resources to be able to help our field do a better job, be more consistent, and be able to provide a more comprehensive approach to transforming workplace cultures to where all talent can thrive, and where we have a greater sense of equity, belonging, greater sense of inclusion through this work. These are the tools that are used to do it. This is what has helped me to be successful. This is what we continue to do with our clients, and with coaching and mentoring other consulting friends and other practitioners inside of organizations. So we've made it available. I'm so excited. This is kind of like what I call my baby has been delivered today.
Well, and as any new mother will tell you, Dr. Stark, now the work begins, because we're going to be putting new stuff on this site all the time. It's not like we're not done here, folks. I mean, this is going to be something that we are going to be continually adding to, and we're not only we didn't birth this baby, we're also going to raise it. That's right. And it's going to be a great community and a great tool for folks to use.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm so grateful that so many see this as a valuable tool, as a great investment. I look forward to, again, working with so many of you. And if there's some things that you saw or things you didn't see, look through the site. You got it now, DEIacademy.com. It is there. It's open. It's available. Please go and join the community. And we're going to, again, look forward to working with you and providing ongoing, new, fresh, relevant, timely resources, tools, and takeaways that you can be more successful. Good. Well, thank you again. It is right up at the top of the hour. I don't think we have any other questions, other than I think people are just left speechless in awe, and they're really excited, just as we are. So thank you again for being here today.